Ladies and gentlemen, Frédéric Martel. Whose book, In the Closet of the Vatican, broke like a thunderclap across the world, church world, other worlds, earlier this year when it was published. In how many languages, Frédéric?
I think 10 and 10 more.
10 and 10 more.
10 already and 10 that's going to be this fall.
Right. To a huge audience. And we are very grateful for Frédéric coming to Hobart for Dark and Dangerous Thoughts, so that we can have a discussion about this book. Frédéric and I will be talking, of course, for a time, and then we'll take some questions from you, please, before the day is out. Frédéric, what is the fundamental lie of the Catholic Church? Is it celibacy? Is celibacy the kind of basic lie?
Celibacy, I don't know. Chastity, for sure. Chastity is the problem. It is the reason why the church is in trouble right now. It's the reason why things cannot be easy to solve. And my book basically is about that. I would say it's about LGBTP, lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, priest. That's the subject. We need to add, 50 years after Stonewall, the P to LGBT.
But the point I'm getting at is that whether we call it
it's
celibacy...
not funny. You didn't like my joke. You know, I prepared that. I was awake at 4 a.m. I prepared that, David, for you. You should have be happy.
In the dressing room a few minutes ago, while we were getting into our good clothes, Frédéric addressed me extremely seriously in the French manner and said, "We are going to be funny." And all I can say is he will try his best. And I will as well. But the notion that priests, bishops, archbishops, cardinals don't have sex is the principal lie of the Catholic Church, isn't it? And on that lie is built a palace of other lies. And those lies can't be untangled because they're all intermeshed.
Yes. I mean, I think it's a culture of secrecy at large, either about money, about sex, about authority, about also, of course, sexual abuse. But it's a culture of secret. Authority also. You don't say anything bad to a priest when you're a seminarian, to a bishop when you're a priest, an archbishop when you're bishops, a cardinal when you're archbishop, and so on and so forth. The culture, very top-down culture of authority. And but let me tell you before we go further that for me, the fact that a bishop, a cardinal, even in Australia, a priest or whoever can be gay, that's not a problem. Honestly, I mean, I'm more happy than if they are gay. Why not? Because if they are not gay or if they don't have a girlfriend, then the problems begin.
Frustration.
You know, it's the problem is not sexuality or homosexuality in the church. The problem is repression. It's sublimation. It's when you lie to others, but also to yourself.
Who is more dangerous, a gay archbishop who is having sex or a gay archbishop who is not having sex?
You know my answer.
Yeah, the one not having sex.
Of course.
How do they make up for, how do they build a life for themselves within that institution?
So, first of all, we need to understand, especially when we discuss cardinals and to some extent bishops and archbishops, we are in front of people that are not very young. A lot of them, especially cardinals, are in general 70, 75, 80 years old. And I met, by the way, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I'm 50 years old, so, you know, for a gay man of 50 years old, it's not that easy to meet people in gay clubs anymore. But in the Vatican, that's so easy because I'm still 30 years younger than them. So to go back on reality, I met also cardinals that are 94 years old. So then, to be serious now, to understand them, you have to understand how, in the culture, in which culture they are. And you have to understand that if they are 90 or 80 years old, to understand them, you need to go back when they were 20 years old, okay? So it means they are locked in a sexuality of the 50s, sometimes the 60s, sometimes even the 30s or the 40s. And so everything is more simple to understand then. They grew up and they discover maybe that they were gay in the 40s, when they were 20 years old. So the culture of secrecy, the double life, the lie, was part of the culture of gay people at that time. So in a way, this is not something so strange, but it's just the fact that they are 50 years lost. I mean, they are 50 years after the sexual liberation, and they still act like if they were 50 years before.
When I was a young man, there was a particular type of gay man in the community who were the most conservative, the best dressed.
The most homophobic.
The most...
Homophobic.
Well, not necessarily, but they lived behind this mask of utter respectability. They were appalling people, but that's how they lived. And when I read your description of these elderly cardinals, they strike me as the men I knew in the late 50s, early 1960s, whose cover was respectability. And now, that notion of respectability has completely disappeared. And so they are left exposed.
Yes, exactly. I think, you know, I work mainly in the Vatican. I lived in the Vatican. I spent 4 years in Rome working in the Vatican. I also traveled 30 countries to meet also cardinals and bishops and archbishops and so on. But my knowledge is more on the top level of the hierarchy. I don't know very well the little priests in little villages, even though I think that's kind of the same system. To understand the system is very simple. You need to understand what it meant to be gay in the 40s once again. When you discover, and sometimes you don't even discover because you don't even know what it is. When you discover that you're gay in 1950, let's say, you know at 20 that your life will be terrible. If you come from a little village in Australia, or in France, or in Italy, or even if you come from a bourgeois family in a big city like, I don't know, Sydney or Melbourne, you are going to be the shame of the family. Your life will be a disaster. Once again, in the 50s, not today. And so becoming a priest was a very normal solution for hundreds, probably hundreds of thousands of priests. And then suddenly things were easy. You can live with men, no women. That's a very misogynist world. There is no woman. In the Vatican, there is no woman at all. I mean, sometimes far away in the end of an apartment, you see 2 maids that are Mexicans. That's it. And that's not very funny, by the way. At least this part of our discussion. Then you can sing, you know, whatever you want. You have clothes that can be very effeminate, and then things are easy in a way. And even your mother, that got the point and knew that something was wrong, suddenly was so happy by the fact that you become a priest because she understood everything from the beginning, and she's so happy by this mysterious vocation.
Have you heard that an old Irish expression to describe gay adolescents, gay adolescent men, boys? One for the church. They called it one for the church.
Yes.
And then I've got Patrick, he's one for the church.
Yes.
Meaning gay.
In Latin America, that's the same. When a priest when somebody is gay, the mother of some priest I interviewed, they said to the kid, okay, at least we will have one priest in the family.
And so for shelter, for a respectable career, for honor, you go into the very institution which is driving the contempt for the kind of person you are. You go into its heart to find shelter.
And then there is the rule, I would say, number one of my book. If there is only one rule and one reason this book, I hope, will stay, it's for that rule. As much as a priest, a bishop, or a cardinal is publicly homophobic, as much as is probably gay in private. That works 99% of the case. So look at your cardinals. And bishops.
Listen to them. Listen to their rage.
They told you that they are gay just by the fact that they go in the street against gay marriage very loudly, for example.
So here is the last feudal state in the world, the Vatican, and it is staffed by largely gay men. Now this is not news.
No.
That the church is so enormously, I mean, that the priests are overwhelmingly gay is also not news.
It's a safe place for gay people. You need to understand that.
Yes. What was it that you particularly...
Or it was, at least.
What was it that you particularly discovered about the Vatican that surprised you in all of this?
You know, you're absolutely right that it is not new, because when I was doing my research, every key, and I met basically all of them, I mean, the famous one, Vaticanist, said to me, oh yes, this cardinal is gay. And this one, he lives with his boyfriend. Oh, this one has a boyfriend in Boston College, he goes there whatever. All that was very well known. And whenever you go in the Vatican with priests, and I lived in the Vatican, I had 3 different apartments within the Vatican, I mean, people were coming to eat with us, with my cardinal or bishops, and we were basically in a gay dinner, and things were kind of known by everybody. What is new for me is not really the fact that you have a lot of gay people among the cardinals and bishops. What is new, it's how, first of all, the percentage.
The percentage,
the importance of the fact, not just 1, 2, 3.
You put it at 80%?
Not me. I mean, a priest that I quote mentioned 80%, which I don't, I mean, that's a qualitative research. It cannot be a quantitative one, except if you sleep with all of them, which is a bit,
well, as a 50-year-old man, you've got at least 10 active years.
Yes, you know. A 90 years old one, you know. No, but whatever. The point is that what is more interesting is the impact, the effect of that. And this is why it's interesting, and this is why I write this book. The fact that they are gay, in a way, it's not our concern. That's their private life. So we can say that's their life. We cannot ourselves speak about that. But the problem is that for the last 50 years, I say 50 because that's basically sexual liberation, that's also since Stonewall, and it's about my age, we have had people basically from the church that told us, you cannot have sex before marriage, you cannot divorce, you cannot be homosexual, you cannot masturbate yourself, or whatever. And they said that for millions of people in the last decades. And suddenly we discover that all of them have lovers, prostitutes, they are gay, they have a double life. So I think that's a story we need to tell. Even though that's also a very complex, because you're funny, I make fun. But the subject is much more complex and also sad, because the people that we are talking about are in a very, I mean, their life is extremely sad to some extent. And there is what I call 50 shades of gay in the Vatican. Yes, I mean, first of all, you have people that are homosexual, but they don't act. They are chaste. So in a way, they are faithful to their vows of chastity or celibacy, and they are gay for me, even if they don't actively, if they are not actively gay, because they are gay by their psychology, by their culture, by the fact that they are also very homophobic. All these elements have an influence a big influence on their life. But at the same time, they are faithful. So in a way, they are in the system the good guys, I would say. Then you have also many that live with a boyfriend, many that have many boyfriends. You have also people that use prostitute. And then you have, which is a totally different subject, the one that kind of abuse people. Not only kids, actually, also adults. There is a lot of abuse.
Seminarians.
Seminarians and, abuse by bishop to priest, priest to seminarians. So that's a culture of, to some extent, a culture of abuse.
Frédéric, obviously we're talking about hypocrisy on a spectacular scale. That's a given. But I wonder whether there's something else here that we should pay attention to. These are the people, the worst of them, you say, these are the people who are laying down cruel laws for the rest of the world. To some extent, this is not just self-protective behaviour, it's not just hypocritical. At a certain level, they must enjoy doing this. They're sadists as well, aren't they? They're dishing out universal cruelty while living lives of their own. This is sadism.
Yes. Again, there is many kind of people. It's not possible to put all of them in the same group. I think to some extent, a lot of them are, they are in a closet, and they are part of that culture of a closet, but they also, so they build the closet, but they are also the victim of the closet. For example, I will tell you about, let's say, a cardinal or bishop. I don't want to be too precise because he's not public. At least in my book.
Come, we're in Hobart. You can name names in Hobart. They go no further than this town.
So this one, I live with him inside the Vatican, and he had a trouble one day because of, he was accused of having sex with an adult, actually. And it was kind of an article, and he was a bit in trouble because of that, and he lost a position. He might be today very important, and he's still important, but not as important as he could have been. He was kind of fired to some position, and he's in a kind of a closet about work in the Vatican. Of course, he's gay. So I said to him one day, can you explain what did happen? Because I heard things about you, and I know it's probably true because many people told me that. And after many meetings, he said to me, okay, Frédéric, I slept with this guy. We were lovers for a long time. And then one day, we split. We stopped our relation. And he was not very stable. He was a priest, adult priest, consent priest. But he was, because I left him, he was extremely unhappy. And step by step, he attacked me and ended up something against me in the press. And I lost basically the confiance of my, at that time, archbishops and nuncio and so on, and I was kind of fired. And I said, okay, but why you didn't explain the story? And then he looked at me and he said, I'm an archbishop, or I'm a bishop, or I'm a cardinal, whatever. What can I say? Can I say, yes, I slept with this guy, he was my lover? No. So, in fact, he was not able to defend himself. And he was kind of punished without, if I trust him, I'm not a judge. I'm not going to say that he's 100% sure, because I don't know what did happen between these people, and no trial was made. It was just a small scandal, and then everything disappeared. So I don't know exactly what did happen, but if what the story was just sexual relationship for a long time with a priest that was consent, that's nothing illegal, okay? But it was illegal in terms of the church, and since he was a cardinal or a bishop or an archbishop, he was punished without judgment and without mistake. So you see also how a lot of stories that we heard can be also, the priests cannot defend themselves.
So you talk of the Vatican where because of its profound gayness, two systems work. Beauty can be a key to promotion.
Of course, it is.
And blackmail, and the threat of blackmail, is constantly present in the organization.
Of course, it is. And sometimes blackmail and beauty at the same time.
So that here is this institution whose world task is the promotion of virtue, And it's being driven to some extent by lust and fear, but in its very gayness. And that's the omerta which you express in Rule 6. There are rules here. This is not just case histories of appalling people. It's boiled down into rules. And I love your rules. Rule number 6. Behind the majority of cases of sexual abuse, there are priests and bishops who've protected the aggressors because of their own homosexuality and out of fear that it might be revealed in the event of a scandal. So, priests who are having sexual relations, who know that other priests are in fact abusing children, can say nothing because the retribution is that they will be outed themselves. And that seems to me, I don't know whether you agree with this, the principal mechanism by which child abuse is protected within the church.
Yes, here we need to be, of course, very, very careful. And first of all, I would like to say that there is no link between the homosexuality and sexual abuse. We need to be very clear on that, and we know all the statistics we have shows very clearly that abuses, the victim of abuse are mainly girls and women, and the abuser are mainly straight, in straight family, in straight school, in education system, and so on and so forth. And for a very simple reason, within the world, you have much more heterosexual than homosexual. So the sexual abuse are mainly heterosexual. Then, however, if you go in the church and you look only in the Catholic Church about statistics, which is just this little bubble, then you see that the victim of priests are 80 to 85% boys, underage boys, or adult men, seminarians or others. So in the church, in the singularity of the Catholic Church, abuse are mainly kind of homosexual abuse. So how is that? And how can we understand that? First of all, I don't think that's homosexuality the problem. As I said before, the problem is a sexual repression. It's a sexual sublimation. It's a sexual lie. And it's a lie about the sexuality of the priests and bishops and cardinals in general. Right now, we have 6,000 priests that are accused of sexual abuse in the US. I think 2,000 here in Australia. 1,000.
Many dead. I mean,
yes.
We're going back sort of.
For
but
50
we're only going.
years.
No, we're only going back
until
about
the
30
war.
years,
Yes.
and it's over 2,000
yes.
priests and religious, so brothers
and
as well.
1,000 in Ireland, in France, in Spain, in UK, in
thousands,
Chile,
thousands and
Chile,
thousands and thousands
Colombia, and Mexico, and so on. So that's not an accident or a little problem. That's a sociological system. So why is that? I think then, and to answer your question, there is this culture of secrecy that has been created for a long time, that the main goal is to lie and to keep the secret of sexuality of priests in general, and homosexuality to some extent, large extent. And this culture of secrecy has been used by people, typically like a pedophile, to hide themselves, even though the culture of secrecy was not created to protect pedophiles. No, I'm pretty sure of that.
But sex of any kind.
Any kind of secret, and especially sexual secret. Also money, and also other things that are not the subject of my book. And then there is what's happening when there is a scandal. If you are in a church, if you are like in an episcopate, in diocese, a small entity, okay? In a diocese, everybody knows each other. It's a small group of people. Let's say where I come from in Avignon, the bishops is in charge of the group of priests, okay? And imagine, that's pure, an example that is not real, even though it might be, but whatever. You have a priest that is abuse kids, okay? And the bishops has a meeting with him, and they have a discussion. He would say, okay, what did you do? And the priest will say, yes, I know I shouldn't have done that. I know it's wrong. I mean, I should have touched this kid and so on. But, Monseigneur, you understand me because you live with Michael. Then it's finished. The bishop cannot do anything. And I think it's not even blackmail. There is also a lot of blackmails. But in this very simple situation, you cannot do anything against the priest because you're also part of the sin. Of course, I believe that being gay is not a sin. But in the church, the confusion between the fact you have sex before marriage, or you're homosexual, or you abuse kids, all of that is the same. From John Paul II to Benedict XVI, whenever they spoke, all these kind of things are entirely a crime, entirely a sin, and you go to hell immediately, kind of. So for the bishop or the cardinal that has to control or to fire a priest, he's also in trouble himself.
Yes.
And sometimes it can be more. It can be just, okay, guy, if you speak about me, if you fire me, I'm going to explain whatever we know about you. And then...
And it might not be sex, it could be money as well.
It can be money, it can be women, because in a way, if a bishop has and whatever, so no, it can be a lot of things, even though in the majority of cases, it is gay.
You might have expected that I would mention George Pell's name at some point this morning, or in the early afternoon as we are. Before the Royal Commission, George Pell took a very high-minded view of gossip amongst priests. He said, "We work within a framework of Christian moral teaching. Discussion of the secret faults of others is not encouraged." What do you think of his view of discretion amongst priests?
So I met George Pell for a long meeting in Rome. He was at that time the Minister of Economics, I would say, in charge of the dicastery of economics for Pope Francis. I met him with his assistant. By the way, I'm not too short, but still, he is very tall, and his deputy is also very tall, so I was like in the middle of them. And to be honest, he was extremely professional with me.
What did he think this interview was all about? I can't imagine George Pell turning out for an interview about the gayness of his fellow cardinals.
Yes, but it was a more general interview on Pope Francis. It was in the beginning of my research, and he was very, I mean, as we say in French, langue de bois. He was not with langue de bois. It means he spoke his mind. He answered questions about homosexuality, about the Pope, about economics, about also the group of cardinals he's part of, because George Pell was an opponent of Francis. We need to remember that he's an ultra-conservative. He's both very homophobic and also extremely against any change of the
Yes,
we church.
We know.
He's extremely against women. He's very misogynist. Is he gay? I don't know. But I think the question might be open to debate. In any case, he's part of this group of cardinals that were against Francis, even though Francis appointed him because Francis is a Jesuit, he's a politician in a way, so he knows also how to manipulate this kind of guy. And this is why I kind of like Francis, which actually I didn't in the beginning. When I began my research, I'm French, you know, and I put that for you. Only for you, Voltaire. So for French people, and especially Voltaire, but also even Pascal, Rimbaud, all these kind of key figures, with the Jesuit, we already are like with kings, you know, we are ready to fight. So he's a Jesuit, Francis, he's 82 years old, and in addition, he's a Peronist Argentinian, which means nationalist Peronist. So it's not this kind of guy I would like to be friend with. For me, he was somebody I didn't trust from the beginning. But then I work in the Vatican and I met many people close to the Pope. I went to Argentina, also to Chile. I understood the strategy and the fight and actually the civil war that really right now is in the Vatican against Francis. And George Pell was among the people fighting against Francis with the Dubia, with Brandmüller, with Cardinal Müller, with Cardinal Caffarra, with Cardinal Meissner, with Cardinal the other Müller, so Cardinal Sarah. That's funny because among them a large percentage are themselves gay, which is an interesting thing. Homophobic, attacking Francis because he's too progressive and too gay-friendly for them, but they are the gay ones. So, you know, it's a bit counterintuitive.
Gays hate change too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, being gay doesn't mean you like change.
And doesn't mean you're a nice guy or a bad one.
I can speak to both of those propositions very strongly. But what's Francis done? Come on, Frédéric. It's all very well to sort of say, you know, there's hope here and there's a different tone here. And what's he done? Nothing. What's he done?
Not exactly nothing.
Such a French reply, don't you think? Not exactly nothing. What's he done?
You want me to make fun or to answer a nice question?
No, it's a perfectly serious question. Hasn't public expectation of change just about run out?
Okay, let's take an example to not to be too much on the case of Pelt. Let's take Chile. Chile, it's an extremely extraordinary big scandal. It is a priest named Fernando Caradima. He's now, I think, 90 kind of years old. And he abused more than 100 kids, whatever. The case is clear. He's already not in jail because he has not been sued. Not even, he has been sued, but he hasn't been indicted. He lives somewhere in a monastery. But what is interesting is when Pope Francis arrived in Chile 2 years ago, I think, he was asked about Caradima and some bishops that protected him. And Pope Francis, in a press conference, I think it was, said, you know, we are not sure, that's not very clear. And he defended not Caradima, he defended Barros, which is one of the bishops that were supposed to have protected Caradima. So he basically support and defend them. Then in the plane back to Peru, some journalists attack Francis, and the newspaper, the Washington Post, the New York Times, made the editorials against Francis. And the victim spoke against the Pope, and when the Pope spoke then, he basically changed his mind. And he said, I made a mistake. By the way, that's the first time a Pope says he made a mistake, which is already the first part of the answer of your question. And he decided to say, okay, I was wrong. I didn't know well the situation. And I think Barros is responsible. And I'm going to ask all the bishops to quit. And all the bishops quit. And we are going to examine the case. I think Francis lied to us. I'm sure 99.99% of that he knew the story. Because Francis is from Argentina. Chile is very close. He spent time when he was young and a lot of time in Chile. When I went to Chile twice for this book, in 1 week, I knew the story. So it's absolutely impossible that Francis didn't know the story about Barros, Caradima, and all of that. So if he decided, first of all, when he was asked to protect Barros, it's not because he didn't know. It's because he didn't want to attack Barros. And why is that? Because if you attack Barros, these bishops, then you have all the bishops around that are also involved. Then you have also the 2 cardinals in Chile that are involved. Then you have all the nuncio, which are the diplomats, the ambassador of the Pope in Chile that are involved. One of them is named Cardinal Angelo Sodano. He's the higher position in the Vatican as the cardinal. And then you have also the people in the Vatican that are involved, and Sodano, and then John Paul II. That's the story of the Chilean scandal. So the Pope, the first reaction of the Pope was to protect Barros, to avoid all the scandal going toward John Paul II. And it is basically what's happening now. All the bishops have been fired, they quit. All the bishops in Chile, the 2 cardinals are indicted. Sodano and all the nuncio are also criticized for the story. So to answer your question, it was a bit long, but it means that Francis is not alone. He's in the middle of an incredible system. If he touches somebody, if he acts on somebody, you have all the Catholic Church that basically exploded. Because all the cardinals right now are to some extent responsible for big crimes of sexual abuse. And so what I think Francis is like a bit of a Gorbachev figure. He wants to protect the church. He doesn't want to destroy it.
But wants to renew it.
But he wants to change it step by step. And this is how I finish to answer your question. What he does, he tries to change the doctrine step by step. And it's very difficult. And he also tried to change that the only things he really can do to change the cardinals. So he is now appointing new one to have all the system change, because the good thing is that when they are 75, they quit, and when they are 80, they cannot vote. So if he survives a few more years, he will have changed all of them. And then the system will be able
Doesn't he have to appoint 30-year-olds as cardinals and really get this? But look, I think all he has to do is just put out a directive to the church saying, whatever the law in any country says, if you understand abuse is happening, you ring the cops.
No,
you just ring the police.
But he said that.
No, he hasn't.
No, he said.
No, Frédéric, he hasn't. What he has said is, if the law in the countries in which you operate mandates reporting, you must report. And that is a huge step for him to take. I understand that.
No,
but he has not taken the next step.
He said that. I'm sorry, he said that. That's basically the first recommendation he said during the summit like in February 21st. So he decided
we'll argue this to the death in this dressing room.
No, the problem is when, and I agree with you, we don't disagree on that, of course. I think exactly the same.
Just ring the cops.
Yes, but the problem is also, and if you take the Pell story or the Barbarin story in France or some others, you might disagree with me, but I think Francis was pretty right. What he did was very simple. When a cardinal is suspected of something, he doesn't act. And it was the same for Pell, for Barbarin, for Macaric. He doesn't want to judge instead of the justice. When a cardinal is indicted, he asks them to go back to their country and to be in front of the justice. By the way, that's the first time a pope says that. I mean, John Paul II, if John Paul II or Benedict XVI will be still in power, Cardinal Pell will be protected in the Vatican.
That's true.
So that's already a big change. Then if the guy is found guilty, then he fired him. And he did that with Cardinal Macaric. And he didn't do that with Barbarin, which I think it's a mistake, but Barbarin, the French cardinal, has been accused and indicted for cover-up, but he used the appeal that is going to be run in, I think, 6 months or 8 months. And I think Barbarin will be fired if he will be felt guilty again. That's basically the system of Francis, I would say. But you need to understand that the church, from top to the end, is entirely accused of sexual abuse to some extent, because the cover-up has a lot of people involved. As I said in the Chilean case, it's all the bishops, all the cardinal, all the nuncio, all the ambassador of the Pope for the last 40 years, which is a lot of cardinals, and all the cardinal in charge of that in the Vatican. So basically, if you are the Pope and you apply the system who did a cover-up as to be fired, there is no cardinals anymore.
Let's talk about your approach to writing this book. You have many sources where you name who is telling you. You give the names of the source, you say what they're saying, it's all there, as we say, on the record. But a lot of this book is what we call off the record, where you don't name your source and you don't identify exactly sometimes who they're talking about. Sometimes you say things that I would never be allowed to say in working for The Guardian. You know, a Swiss Guard confirmed. I would not be allowed to say that because it's too vague. How do you understand your approach to truthfulness and to convincing the readers that you have the information?
So first of all, 42 cardinals spoke to me, and the names are in the books.
Yes.
And also 50 bishops, and their names are in the books. And more than 1,500 peoples, and the name of many peoples are in the books. Second of all, there is 300 pages that are not in the book, but they are online for free, which are documents, articles, bibliography, but also sources that come from the police, come from diplomatic telegrams, and a lot also from the CIA and Department of State from the US, documents that are now declassified that I use with a group of 80 researchers. I'm not alone. I did that with 80 researchers. However, it's true there is also sometimes names that are vague or positions that I mention without saying exactly who they are. I mean, that's very simple. The question is why this book never been written. It has never been written because if you are an Italian already in Italy, a book like that is complex. The media, the publishing world will be afraid of this kind of books. And they are, even with me. Even if my publisher is Italian, he asked me when I met him, Carlo Feltrinelli is very courageous, he accepted to do this book with the condition 5 years ago that I will publish it in the same day in French, in Italian, but also in Spanish and in English, not only in Italian. Second of all,
so it's beyond the control.
Yes, because then he can say it's a translation. Second of, if you're not, if you are a Vaticanist, which is the main Vaticanist, the journalists that work in the Vatican, and you publish this book, well, your job, you lost your job.
All doors are closed.
Your career is over. Okay. Yeah. If you are a straight person, and you do this kind of books, you don't have the code. You don't have the network. You cannot understand. So this is why the book has been done by a French, non-Vaticanist, non-Italian, that has the code. And so to answer your question, and since we are here in Hobart, in a place where nobody will talk about that outside of the island, you know, and it's an island of an island, so it's, I know it's very...
Yes. And it's down below the other island. Yeah.
It will take more than 24 hours to get the information to... I will say, and by the way, I say that only in Tasmania. I wouldn't have said that, for example,
in Sydney or Melbourne.
At Vivid Live Symphony.
Of course not. So we can speak absolutely.
Okay. So go to the point. Yeah. What I'm doing, it's quite often, I need, the book has to be done with a kind of, I wouldn't have done this book, all my books before were done in a different way. Of course, I respect the rule of the Guardian, as you said. But if you respect the rule of the Guardian, you're not going to tell this story. And you're not going to have this book. And you are going to miss one of the most important secret of the last 50 years. So what I'm doing is, for example, I met a cardinal, okay? This cardinal, I spoke with several priests that slept with him. Or have been hit in a very hard way by him. So we are sure 100% that he is gay.
Yep.
But if I mention that, my book will have some problem with legal issues, okay?
Yep.
I have 14 lawyers for this book, so we are ready to fight, but we need also to protect ourselves. So what I'm going to do, I know the story, but I cannot mention the fact that he's gay, okay? Mm-hmm. So I take another story with the same character when I met him, so everything is based on real things, and actually everything is totally right. I described the cardinal when I met him, about his clothes, about his perfume, about the piece of art he has on the world, whatever. A lot of things.
The beauty of his servants is a very important issue in this book.
I mean, the lover in general are the assistant, the bodyguard, the driver, and in general...
And not to forget the widow of my sister. Is that
That's
right?
a very good one.
That was my favorite one.
Exactly.
This is not my man. This is the widower of my sister.
I was with my assistant there. We kind of laughed when he said that, and we went in the elevator to not to be seen laughing, you know, whatever. So the new story is based on this kind of insinuation. That's true. And some people said, when a cardinal uses perfume, even Guerlain or Yves Saint Laurent, it doesn't mean that he's gay. Of course, I know when you use perfume, you're not gay. But because I know the first story, I'm able to do the second one, which is based on facts that are real, without saying the other fact that I cannot mention. That's what we call journalism. Maybe at the Guardian, they need to know how we need to work.
Well, at The Guardian, we would also
And The
put
Guardian
out
were very friendly with my book. They love my culture of journalism.
I'm a severe critic. I'm hoping for a fresh edition every 5 years as death takes its toll, because the angel of death is, certainly in this country, one of the greatest spirits of free speech we have. As the scythe goes across the elderly generation, we can speak the truth, for instance.
Exactly.
So perhaps you could just put up online.
I'm going to
Another one has died.
Now we can say he's gay.
Yeah. A great friend of mine, alas dead, the playwright Nick Enright, used to love the expression, gay as a Mexican tablecloth. Now, there are some sensational questions that have come in here, which I'm going to read some of the questions that I don't want you to answer. Behind closed doors, is the church one big orgy? No, we haven't got time for that. I think we can take that as read. From Lisa Wilmot, do you think the church has a future? This is the biggest question. Do you think the church has a future?
So the question about orgy.
I'm a man without authority this morning.
That's more interesting. The future, we don't care. What we care, it's orgy, you and me.
You are 50 and you already don't care about the future? Anyway, only 50.
I discovered a chemsex party in the Vatican. I knew it very well. And it was in the second floor of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. If you don't know what is I know you're too, that's not your kind of thing. A chemsex party means chem, which means drugs, chemicals. Chemsex party. Drugs, sex, and
I should take
alcohol.
a note of this.
Exactly.
It's a most remarkable idea.
But, the Vatican is ahead of the trend about chemsex party. I think they are pretty good on new kind of sexual experimentations. And we didn't mention the prostitute in Rome, which is also another story, and the Swiss Guard.
The Swiss Guards who are sick of being hit on by cardinals, according to your book. But look, do explain the traditional nature of prostitution in Rome, because I think it is, in its way, not so much a searchlight as a flickering lantern into the traditional values of the Catholic Church.
Yes, they keep the old way of prostitution. That's like a museum. They do it in the way it was done 50 years ago, and it works pretty well. That's an industry. But to go back on the chemsex...
You talk about chemsex for a bit, and then we'll come back in.
So the chemsex party, I knew it was in this apartment, and actually some priest told me they were there, and also two cardinals went there. And suddenly, unfortunately for me, I was already ready to publish that in the book, but the police find one of them, and they were all arrested. So in a way, I have the proof that it's totally true, because all that is now public and it has been in the media, but my story was not new because it was then in the media. But the sex party in the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, can you imagine? I mean, the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith is the place of the Inquisition. For centuries, they have done the war.
They set the rules.
The rules about sex and all these kind of things. And they organized this chemsex party within that building.
It speaks to bravery in a way.
Yes, they are very courageous.
Frédéric, absolutely seriously for a moment about the future of the church. The hideous revelations of child abuse, and the church is still there, it's still up and running. The hypocrisy that you've described, I'll bet that nothing has changed in the Vatican as a result of the world revelations that you have made in this book. Is it because the church is onto an unbeatable business model, which is the cultivation of shame and guilt? And no scandals, no revelations of hypocrisy are going to touch the fact that there is this perfect and enduring business model. Make people ashamed, offer them forgiveness, and take a bit of a cut along the way. That's the model.
You know, I will be more positive and optimistic than you, even though I'm not a Catholic. I've been Catholic until 12 years old.
I'm not either.
So it's a long time ago, and but I don't have revenge to take to Catholicism. I'm just trying to do serious journalism, even though we make a bit of fun. The book is not about scandal. It's not about, I mean, everything is really nice and with empathy for these people. And I don't attack them. I try just to, I don't out them. I try to out the system, not themselves. And I will be positive on the future, first of all, because they were 12. So they can go back to 12. They are able to recreate the church whatsoever first. Second of all, the church might look in Australia or in France as in trouble, but in the US, the Catholicism has never been so strong and powerful than before. Why? Because of the 50 million Mexicans that basically a lot of them are Catholics. In Latin America and Brazil, the country is one of the biggest going with more population of Catholic in the world. In Africa, Catholicism is still very powerful. So even though in France we have, I think, 800 priests who die every year, and only 50 that are ordained, so it means in 10 years you basically don't have priests at all.
Yes.
Things can be very complex, and to some extent, you understand Pope Francis when he doesn't care, by the way, by Australia, he doesn't care about France, he cares about Latin America, about Africa, about Asia.
Because they're the future.
Because they are the future. So maybe his strategy is more smarter than what we might think.
A question from the audience, what drugs? Can we just try to lift the tone a little? But also, what has to change? What has to change? And can I add another line to that question? Are there any levers for change at all?
You know, I mean, basically, we all know the solution. And even Vaticanists and people that are Catholics believe and know today the solution. The solution is very simple. It's to ordain women. It's to accept homosexuality, and it is to accept the priest being married. I mean, you can say whatever you want. Until these three things will be done, the scandals will still exist, and it's not possible to change the church. But at the same time, the Pope, and I discovered that, especially during the Synod, the Pope has no power to really
That's a revelation.
Change that.
The Pope really has no power.
No, because in this kind of issue, he needs to have the majority of the College of Cardinals. And so, in a way, this is why I said to you, and you didn't believe me, he's doing something. He is changing every day the group of cardinals. And doing that is preparing another Pope to do the big change. So the answer of the question about the future depends, I would say, mainly on the time the Pope will survive. If he dies 1 year, or if he quits, or if he is assassinated, then we can go back to a big backlash. If he's able to survive 5 or 10 more years, I think the church will go to a new direction. Because the civil war we have now is extremely strong. You have cardinals that basically are organized and funded by the extreme right in America, typically cardinal like Sarah. I was the first to show that he got some money by the far right for his campaign. You have cardinal like Brown Muller, like Burke, like that are linked to Steve Bannon, and I interviewed Steve Bannon about that, and I'm sure they are organizing things to have the Pope to quit.
Bannon. Yes.
No, they want the Pope to quit. That's the first time in history where cardinals are organizing the Pope leaving. So we'll see if it will end in 2 years or 10 years.
Do you think, this is another question from the audience, a very interesting question. Do you think homosexuality is equally as prevalent in other religions, in Judaism and Islam and Hinduism?
No.
In Catholicism?
No, and actually sexual abuse neither, even though the two things are totally different. the key element is still chastity. I mean, why you have this kind of, I think sexual abuse is, first of all, the most terrible problem for the church since the time of, when we had free pope or in Avignon, the city where I was born, many centuries ago. The sexual abuse crisis, it is the very big, the church can die because of that. So that's, yes, I mean, that's a scandal that is so important that it might have effects on the long run. So yes, I think that's the core of the things is only in the Catholic Church because of chastity. And by the way, I want to give you another little secret. Yes. Why I did this book? Why?
Yes, why?
I mean, since we are in Hobart, in an island, to another island, very, very, very far away, and I can tell you that.
It's inexplicable why you would want to say things like this in a book. Yes, please, why?
I come from Avignon, as I said. It's a nice city in a big country, France.
Ruined bridge. I think they could finish
There is a bridge. And we had the Pope a long time ago. So basically, I wrote this book to attack the Vatican and to attack also the Pope. Then they will be weak. We have the Pope back
again
in Avignon. That's my strategy. This is why the book has been funded by the Office of Tourism of the city of Avignon. Yes, but please don't tell that.
This is a secret that only we will share. Well, I think we should bring up the hour by just going through the popes of my lifetime and you marking them out of 10 for gayness. Pius XII. How many out of 10 for him being gay?
I would say 50% for him.
Only 50?
Yes, I'm not sure about him.
Pasolini wrote love letters. Anyway, all right. Only 50% for him. Okay. John the 23rd.
70.
Paul the 6th.
99.
The forgotten Pope, John Paul I.
100.
John Paul II.
2%.
2%. A straight Pope.
Probably.
Look at the damage he did.
Yeah, straight people are not good people. I know.
We can agree on that. Not universally good, anyway. John Paul II.
You don't even know the list of the Pope. Benedict XVI, the next
Yes, I know that.
99.
99% gay.
Yes. I think homophile. I
Not active?
Yes, I don't believe he had any sex relation with the beautiful Georg, but I think his psychology, and I'm speaking very seriously here, his psychology, he's also 92, I think 93 years old, so he's a man of the 30s, the 40s, the way he acts, the sublime, and I think he's the most honest Pope for maybe all of them, because
Benedict.
I assume he's gay, he knew or he kind of understands something, and he asked the gay people to do very simple things. If you are gay, it's terrible, but please stay chaste. And he did that. So he asked the other to do what he did to himself. And to some extent, that's beautiful, even though that's totally anachronic. But that's much better.
But he was the rule maker. He was the one who laid down tougher and tougher and nastier and nastier rules.
I mean, people think it's a contradiction. It is not. It's a consequence. You are homophobic because you're gay. That's as simple as that.
Is there another thing as well, though?
There is also Francis, by the way.
Yeah, we're getting to Francis. I'm the one we're really hanging on here. But is there another thing as well? That at the end of a dogma's life, when a piece of ideology has had its day, when it's just about over, when the public no longer supports it, that's when the rules get nastiest and most desperate.
Absolutely. Like in the, this is why I took the example of Gorbachev, or you can take also the French Revolution I know you don't know these kind of things,
no.
But whatever.
What happened?
Yes, that's the way we act in France, that's it. Kings, and now they don't want to be king and queen anymore.
Yeah,
they know the story.
Frédéric, it's 2 minutes past
Yes,
one.
because I speak about monarchy, immediately you want to
want to stop.
stop the debate.
It is only because I have another hour in me on the monarchy, and I know we mustn't go there. So
So what was the point? I miss it.
we've got lost in the forest because we are both hovering off the one we really need to ask about.
So-
Out of 10, Francis.
Probably straight.
Probably straight.
Yes.
Have you got proof of that?
The way he acts, the way he is, the way he... You know, when you meet somebody, and that's true also with Cardinal, when I met Cardinal Casper, when I met Cardinal Omela, and you might not like the idea of working with a gaydar, which is a radar to identify gay. But when I met them, I'm sure about 2 minutes that they are straight. Why? Because they are going to speak about homosexuality in a very normal way. Okay, I disagree with gay marriage, but I think there is an argument, another argument, maybe not. That's a debate. I never went to a parade against gay marriage or a demonstration. So when you are in front of cardinal like that, you know they act normally and they are not gay. But when you have a cardinal that is so obsessed about homosexuality, that is the worst thing in the world. It doesn't speak about poverty, about people
Social
being
justice,
sick or hungry,
refugees.
or whatever. They are obsessed with homosexuality, and they want to demonstrate. They want to go in the street. Typically, Cardinal Macaric, typically Marcel Martial, typically Karadima, typically
The
Groer,
worst, the worst.
many like that. All of them were gay, actually. So yes, I think Francis, he doesn't care when people are gay around him. Cardinals, bishops, priests, if they are gay, he's okay with that. The problem is when they are homophobic and gay. Then he's going to be very mean. And he said that publicly. He denounced the cardinal being schizophrenic, being hypocritical. He said they are the rigid with a double life. And when you understand the vocabulary of Francis, you know it is the way he does to denounce gay people.
Few of us will have an opportunity to meet other cardinals or indeed even the Pope, but we do meet priests from time to time. My final question to you this morning, Frédéric, when we meet a priest, should we assume he's gay until proved otherwise in the modern world?
I would say yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please thank Frédéric Martel. Who will be signing copies of this remarkable book in the foyer of the Odeon, Hobart now. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for this remarkable festival. And let's thank Frédéric once more.
And